Hello everyone, a very good morning to all of you. Welcome to the Finance Current Affairs session. So this session is going to be very important for your examination. Why? Because this is particularly just give me a second now. Okay. So exams is just पहले के weeks के आपके जो sessions होते हैं definitely they are going to be very important. So that's why and there are a lot of news in this particular session. Okay, there are actually a lot of news in this particular session. So let's start the discussion. Okay. The very first news for today is, guys, Goods and Service Tax Appellate Tribunal launched, GST-80. So basically, India is having a multi-level of adjudication for the disputes, right? Before the GST-80, appeals could be made to various appellate authorities, both at state level and both at central level. There was no single unified appellate forum, right? As of now, there was not single unified appellate forum for the second level appeal. Let's suppose an aggrieved party wants to appeal against the particular order. So there was no appellate tribunal as of now. So that's why GST appellate tribunal is now launched. Okay, GST-80. So it was launched by Union Finance Minister, formally in the New Delhi recently, right? And there is a provision of e-courts as well in this particular GST-80, which was unveiled. So digital platforms allow the filing of appeals online now. You can file your appeal online now, tracking the case progress in the virtual hearing as well, right? So again, it will be having a principal bench in the New Delhi, and 31 state benches will also be there across the 45 locations in India. And obviously, what will be the composition of this particular 80? 2 judicial members, 1 technical member from the central, 1 technical member from the state, right? So this is the composition of the GST-80. Good morning, everyone. Next one is the banking system liquidity deficit widened to more than 87,000 crore. So now we all know that ये वाला September से जो month आने चालू हो जाते हैं, इसके अंदर there are major timelines, right? So that's why there is always a liquidity deficit in this particular quarter, right? Usually. And there is credit growth exceeding the deposit growth, which is again creating a surplus shortage here. So again, RBI has conducted a VRR auction, right? RBI has conducted a VRR auction, plus cut 1 tranche is scheduled on 4th of October, which will roughly release 60,000 crore of liquidity. So definitely it will help to patch the liquidity deficit, right? Acha, next one, monetary policy statement, though a separate video will be released soon related to monetary policy statement in which I have covered most of the things in a detailed manner. But as of now, in this particular monetary policy committee meeting, there is not so much to cover things in a detailed manner, right? Because they have kept the repo rate unchanged at 5.5%, though some of the projections are now changed, right? So repo rate is at 5.5%, SDF again 5.25%, and MSF, which is our ceiling of the corridor, is at 5.75%, right? Then policy stance remains neutral. Policy stance remains neutral. And the decision to keep the repo rate at 5.5% is unanimous, but the decision to keep the policy stance neutral was not unanimous. It was decided by majority. 2 members were suggesting a shift from neutral to accommodative. Still, as of now, the policy stance is neutral only, right? Now, what changes there in this particular data is the GDP projection is 6.8% overall, okay? The GDP projection will be 6.8% overall. This has now changed. Acha, can you guys tell me the last meeting GDP projection? Any idea about the last meeting GDP projection? What was the projection of 2026 in the last MPC meeting? Any idea? Yes, 6.5. Very good, Rahul. As of now, it is 6.8, right? As of now, it is 6.8, and for the Q1 2027, it is 6.4. So this is the recent data. You need to remember this particular data. ठीक है, ये वाला डेटा आपको याद रखना है. पुरानी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमेटी का जीडीपी प्रोजेक्शन आप भूल सकते हो क्योंकि ये वाला आपका नया आ चुका है, ठीक है। देन इफ आई टॉक अबाउट इन्फ्लेशन, देन इन्फ्लेशन का प्रोजेक्शन for financial year 2026 is downgraded to 2.6%, so that's good. 2.6% for financial year 2026, and for quarter 1 of financial year 2027 is now 4.5, right? Yeah, and I have given a summary as well of this particular meeting in this PDF, so after this session do download this PDF for the best interest. Otherwise there are no significant changes in the MPC meeting, though a detailed video will soon be out. Next one. Outward remittances under the LRS declined in July 2025. So the outward remittances under the liberalized remittance scheme is now at 2.45 billion, right? So it's a close to 10.9%, close to 11% year-on-year dip in terms of LRS remittances, right? And it is majorly driven because of the outflows in the travel and overseas education segment, right? It is majorly driven because of the travel and overseas education outflows. Then government borrowing for half year 2 of financial year 2026. Now this can be important for your examination, right? And there are so many news in this particular session that can be important for your upcoming examination. So that's why I'm again saying this lecture can be very, very important, right? So what is the plan of government borrowing? So as of now, the gross market borrowing is pegged at 6.77 lakh crore as of now, out of which 10,000 crore will come from the sovereign green bonds, out of which 10,000 will come from the sovereign green bonds. Apart from that, there is a green shoe option as well. What is a green shoe option? Let's suppose if government wants to raise more and more money, even more than the stated ticket size, then they can do so up to 2,000 crore, right, against each securities in the auction. And this can be very, very important for your upcoming examination. The ways and means advances limit, the WMA limit. This is for the half yearly 2 of financial year 2026 is now 50,000 crore, right? Is now 50,000 crore. This is there to smooth any kind of temporary mismatches in the government payment. Let's suppose the government is facing any kind of temporary mismatches, maybe because of the cash flow. Then WMA limit is very, very essential, and the limit is 50,000 crore as of now. This is for the half yearly 2 of financial year 2025. So RBI has released a press release as well on the RBI website related to the WMA limit, right? And this line can also be important. The Reserve Bank of India may trigger fresh flotation of market loans when the Government of India utilizes 75% of the WMA limit. So this is the limit, 50,000 crore. If the Government of India utilizes up to 75% of this particular limit, which is I think 37,500 something, right? Then the RBI may ask the Government of India to utilize any other source other than just utilizing the WMA limit, right? Supervisory Data Quality Index for June 2025. So 4 major things are observed in this particular data: accuracy related to the data, timeliness, completeness and consistency related to the data, right? Now अब आप मार्च वाला डेटा साइड में रख सकते हो because we are having the new data related to your June month, है ना? So what is the June month data? In the June month 2025, the scheduled commercial bank SDQI score is 89.9. So what things we need to remember from the SDQI data? Let's discuss about this thing. कि सर हमको SDQI data में क्या क्या पढ़ना रहता है. So first thing, scheduled commercial bank June 2025 SDQI score is 89.9. ठीक है, 89.9. The very first thing. Second thing, इसमें से कौन सा criteria is outperforming? So completeness criteria is leading the pack among the other components with 96.2%, with 96.2%. And if I talk about which category of bank is outperforming in terms of private, public, foreign and SFB, so SFB is leading the pack with 90.7%, right? With 90.7 score, SDQI score, right? So there is an increase. If I talk about March, the March data was 89.3. Now the scheduled commercial bank data has increased to 89.9. So these 3 data you can remember for the best understanding. And again, we were having below 80 ka score in March 2025 related to one financial entity, but as of now we don't have any such entity. So all the entities are either in the acceptable or in the good range, right? So that's again good for the economy, banking economy as a whole, right? Here we can see that the highest parameter is of completeness, which is 96.2, and the SDQI score is 89.9. Okay, so please do remember this. Next one, Paytm Money and Jio BlackRock, not BlackRock, Jio BlackRock. So Paytm Money and Jio BlackRock launched India's first AI-driven equity fund. Can be important for your examination. Okay, and don't ignore this particular lecture because जो भी आपके एग्जाम से पहले के लेक्चर्स होने वाले हैं वो काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होने वाले हैं. यूजुअली हमने देखा है कि करंट ट्रेंड के अंदर से ज़्यादा आता है, राइट, आपके एग्जामिनेशन में. सो पेटीएम मनी एंड जियो ब्लैकरॉक लॉन्च इंडियाज फर्स्ट एआई ड्रिवन इक्विटी फंड, right? What is the name of the scheme? Jio BlackRock Flexi Cap is the name of the scheme. And this is India's first systematic active equity, which is a AI driven equity fund for the retail investors, right? This is a AI driven fund for the retailers as of now. You also can participate in it. The NFO is still open, right? Jio BlackRock Flexi Cap Fund. It will be using AI, machine learning and alternative data. And BlackRock is having the best platform in the world. Aladdin platform is the name of the BlackRock's platform, whether you know or not. I can say it's enormous, right? It's having enormous data related to risk, related to credit, related to each and everything, right? So please do remember this particular partnership. Next one, BOI, Bank of India and Cash Invoice launches the BOI Trade Easy. It's nothing but a digital MSME lending platform. So the goal is to disburse 1000 crore in working capital loan through this particular platform in the next 6 months, right? So the tie-up is of BOI, Bank of India and Cash Invoice. They are going to launch BOI Trade Easy. This is a digital MSME lending platform, okay? OECD raises India's growth outlook to 6.7% in 2025. So we can see that India's 2025 growth rate here is 6.7% and in 2026 it is 6.2%. OECD is none other than Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, right? अब अगर इसके रीजंस पढ़ोगे तो घूम फिर के हर न्यूज़ के अंदर एक ही रीज़न मिलेगा, स्ट्रॉन्ग डोमेस्टिक डिमांड, राइट, जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स एंड मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी ईजिंग, राइट. वी ऑल नो दैट जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा यहाँ पे एक रिफॉर्म आया था, रेट कट्स का, स्लैब रेट रैशनलाइजेशन का, जिसकी वजह से देयर विल बी अ बूस्ट, राइट. सो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द न्यूज़ के अंदर आपको यही वाले पॉइंट्स मिलने हैं. यूपीआई नाउ एक्सेप्टेड इन कतर. सो कतर ड्यूटी फ्री बिकम्स द फर्स्ट मर्केंट. Qatar duty free becomes the first merchant to accept the UPI here. So Indian travelers who are going to Qatar can use the UPI as well. Again, this is marking another international expansion. Before that, we have expanded the UPI to Singapore, to UAE, to multiple countries. And Qatar duty free, which is an international airport, becomes the first merchant in Qatar to go live for the UPI payments via the QR code. So this can also be important. Right, this can also be important. RBI renews commitment to the FX Global Code. So there is a FX Global Code, right, which is setting the principles for the good conduct in the wholesale foreign exchange market. So what is FX Global Code? It's nothing but an entity who is setting the principles for the good conduct in the wholesale foreign exchange market. So RBI has renewed the commitment to the FX Global Code. Can be important. They have signed a statement of commitment to the FX Global Code, right? So it's recently got renewed, and again RBI will be a market participant of this code. So this again strengthens the regulatory, I can say, compliance around the FX side, right? So this code is voluntary. It's not at all legally binding for each and every central bank to join this particular code, but it's always better. Why? Because it covers principles related to integrity, transparency, risk management and so on in the FX dealing in the global market, right? Very, very important for your examination. SEBI raises custodian net worth requirement to 75 crore. Earlier it was 50 crore. Now it is 75 crore. Please do remember, this is the custodian's net worth requirement. If you are a custodian, how much minimum net worth you need to hold? At least 75 crore. So from earlier 50 crore, now it is 75 crore. What about the existing custodians who are not having the requirement of, who are not fulfilling the requirement of 75 crore? They will be getting a 3-year transition period. If you are an existing custodian, you will be getting a 3-year transition period to comply with this particular provision. If you are a new custodian, then you need 75 khoka now to start custodian business, right? Definitely, this is not just the monetary limit, but you are required to enhance your governance structures as well, risk management policies. You need to implement scalable infrastructure. These are some of the add-on obligations on the customers that SEBI has imposed now. Prohibition on making any kind of exaggerated claim about the capabilities, internal control mechanism, and fit and proper criteria of all the persons who are part of the custodian, right? So these are the basic criteria. So these are the basic criteria. And do you guys know what custodian is? They are just handling the assets. They are maintaining the security accounts, maybe corporate actions or any kind of your instructions they are following in the financial markets, right? Let's suppose a particular investor has hired a custodian to manage its account, right? So I have given the concept of custodian as well for those who are not aware about the custodian. Who is a custodian? It's nothing but an entity who is responsible for holding securities in safe custody. Let's suppose I am a foreign institution. Let's suppose I am a foreign investor. I want a custodian. I want a custodian to be appointed for holding securities on my behalf or to dealing with multiple things related to corporate actions or acting as my agent. So it's nothing but custodian is nothing but a large investor ka agent, right? Custodian is a large investor ka agent, and it is different from the depositories. Okay, it is different from the depositories. Next, important, it's a part of your RBI circulars as well. Okay, so RBI circular September 2025 part 1 will be soon also released, most probably by today only. RBI allows standalone primary dealer to trade in Rupee NDF. Now what is NDF? What is NDF? NDF is nothing but non-deliverable rupee derivative market. Non-deliverable rupee derivative market. So it's a derivative contract. The underlying asset is a exchange rate. Let's suppose INR, right? Let's suppose INR currency. So this is based on the INR. This derivative contract is based on the movement in the INR. Right, so let's suppose if a foreign entity is having a exposure in India and it wants to hedge the portion of INR. They don't want currency risk. So what they can do is they can hedge the risk via the non-deliverable rupee derivative market. So earlier only authorized dealer category 1 banks were permitted. Now AD category 3, 1 was already there. Now they have added the AD category 3 as well, right? So they can also facilitate this particular transaction. That's what the update is, and the master direction related to this has updated the word standalone primary dealer AD category 3 everywhere, because now they can also do the business, right? That's the simple update. Again, there are so many new directions that RBI has released, right? RBI issues directions for the digital payment transaction authentication mechanism, which will be applicable from the 1st of April 2026, right? So digital payment ka transaction kya? If you have made any kind of transaction digitally, then you need to authenticate it, right? How to authenticate it will be covered in this particular direction. So new direction will be applicable from 1st of April 2025. And let's suppose if you are doing a cross-border transaction, which is non-recurring in nature, you don't frequently do it, plus the card is also not present. The issuer needs to comply with this direction by 1st of October 2026, right? Yes, Rahul, any news can be important. Definitely, we need to have at least the basic idea of that news. Okay, always. At least the basic idea of that news. Next one. So this direction will be applicable on the payment system provider and the participants, right? All the participants like banks and non-banks will be part of this particular direction. They need to follow it. All the domestic digital payment transactions are covered, right? So this is restricted to all the domestic digital payment transactions. However, some of the cross-border transactions involving card will also be covered in this direction. So there is a mandate of two-factor authentication. Please use two-factor authentication. Let's suppose I'm doing a transaction with my net banking. The first factor of authentication will be my password. What can be second factor? Any other dynamic. If that's an online transaction, if the card is not present physically, then we need a dynamic second factor authentication as well. It can be OTP, right? Just like I'm doing shopping on Amazon. So what I do, I need to pay that amount. So what I can do, I can pay it via my net banking. So I need to enter my password. That's the first authentication. And the second authentication will be OTP, which is a dynamic, which changes with every transaction, right? It changes with every transaction. If I'm doing a physical transaction with my card, no need of the OTP, right? I just need to swipe that card. Okay, so just covering the major things from this particular circular. Why? Because I have already covered this circular in the part 1 of September 2025. The video will be out by today. For best understanding about the circulars, you need to watch that video. In the Finance Current Affairs session, we will be covering circulars in a crisp manner. And there are certain exemptions as well, right? Not everyone has to comply with the two-factor authentication. There are certain exemptions as well. Let's suppose if you are making a small value contactless card transaction, this can be important. Let's suppose you are making a small value contactless card transaction, then obviously you don't have to do the two-factor authentication. Why? Because contactless card transaction का concept इसलिए आया था because we don't have to make the transactions complex. We need to make them easy. अगर उसमें two-factor authentication डाल दोगे तो again it will be complex, right? That's why. और यहाँ पे कुछ अलग से भी आपके exemptions है, like recurring transactions. Say for example, I'm paying a OTT subscription, so I don't have to compulsorily make two-factor authentication for these kind of transactions, right? Small value offline digital payments, travel bookings via few sites, and so on. Next one, NUC, FDC and CSC. Now, what is NUC, FDC? National Urban Cooperative Finance and Development Corporation Limited. They have signed an MOU with CSC, Governance Services India, to accelerate the digital transformation for the UCBs, right? So this is for the UCBs. The both organizations have signed a MOU. Why? For the digital infrastructure for urban cooperatives. Just a quick understanding of the headline will also be fine here, right? Not so important. Still, you need to know the headline at least. Can be asked in the MOU related question. Guidelines related to settlement, claim settlement related to the deceased customer. Let's suppose the customer is no more. So RBI was planning from, I can say, months to bring a standardized guidelines, and it's out, right? It's already out in the September month. So this is a standardized guideline, and every bank has to follow this with no exception, right? And banks are required to adopt these norms not later than 31st March 2026. 31st March 2026. It will be allowed, it will be applicable on all the deposits, safe deposit lockers, right? Your saving account, your FD account, everywhere. Now, if you are having a nomination in that account, or there is a survivorship clause, either or survivor, right? There are some survivorship clauses whenever, I don't know whether you have done a FD or not. So when you go to the bank to do an FD, there is a survivorship clause, either or survivor, any one of the survivor, and so, right? Single, joint operation. So if there is a nomination or if there is a survivor clause, there will be lesser compliance, right? There will be lesser compliance, then bank can directly pay the balance to the nominee or the survivors, considering a valid discharge of the bank's liability, right? So they don't have to go into the succession certificates and legal heir certificates and so on, because that creates complexity for the family members of the deceased person, right? That's why RBI has simplified the norms here. And there is a threshold limit as well. Up to a threshold limit, there will be a simplified procedure. 15 lakh for non-cooperative commercial banks and 5 lakh for the cooperative banks, right? 15 lakh for the regular banks and 5 lakh for the cooperative banks. Again, if it is a case of safe deposit, locker or articles in a safe custody, you need to communicate within 15 days, right? Let's suppose if a nominee has given you the required documents, then you need to communicate within a timely manner within 15 days. Earlier, there was no such timeline, right? So all these provisions are just there to remove the hardship faced by the nominee or the family members of the deceased. Plus, in case if you are delaying related to locker, then a fixed compensation will be there of 5,000 per day. After 15 days, 5,000 per days will be the compensation here, right? And in case of deposit, there will be bank rate plus 4% per annum will be the rate that you need to pay as a compensation if you haven't settled the transaction within 15 days of the date of receipt of all the required documents. Let's suppose the nominee has submitted all the required documents. Now within 15 days you need to discharge it, otherwise bank rate plus 4% will be the penal interest that you need to pay here to the person, right? So these are the major things. For the rest of the details, please do watch my RBI circular video for the detailed compilation, for the detailed decoding of this particular circular. RBI imposes penalty on Muthoot FinCorp for internal ombudsman non-compliance. So there was a internal ombudsman related non-compliance, right? Whenever there is a non-compliance, in case of a specific non-compliance, there is a automatic escalation to the internal ombudsman, right? To the internal ombudsman. Let's suppose the customer complaint was not resolved at a lower level, then there should be an automatic escalation to the internal ombudsman. That was the core purpose of bringing the internal ombudsman. But because of the absence of this kind of structure in the Muthoot FinCorp, or there were some lapses, that's why they have imposed a monetary fine of 2.7 lakh, right? India strengthens telecom cybersecurity with DOT, Department of Telecommunication, and FIUIND. So they both have signed a MOU. Why? To enhance coordination, data sharing and cooperation in combating the cyber crimes and financial frauds. Obviously for the financial frauds there is FIUIND, and for the telecommunication related things there is Department of Telecommunication. So they will be collaborating, they will be doing data sharing as well, right, for the betterment to combat the cyber crime, financial fraud and those frauds related to the telecom infrastructure. IIP Index of Industrial Production for August month, the new data is 4%. Okay, so I think it's now quite easy to remember the data. 4% is the data, right, for August 2025. Earlier it used to be 4.3 in July. Now the current data is 4%, right? Now the current data is 4%. Sectoral contribution, mining has contributed strongly in the growth of industrial production. Okay, so mining is the driving reason, is what I can say here. SEBI mandates dedicated UPI address for registered intermediary. Now we have already covered this circular. एक UPI handle launch हो जाएगा, right? This will be standardized, this will be validated, this will be exclusive UPI structure for any kind of broker, any kind of mutual fund or investment advisor. If you are a retail investor, you are paying to broker, mutual fund, investment advisor, you need to do it with a particular UPI handle. So these entities, intermediaries need to have a valid UPI ID now, which is effective from 1st of October 2025. That's why it's there in the news, right? 1st of October से ये चीज़ implement होने वाली है. The handle is @valid, @valid, right? And this particular facility is being developed by SBI check, sorry, SEBI check, SEBI check, SEBI check, right? ये वाली चीज़ भी हमने कवर करी थी पहले. So I think in May or June we have covered this thing, and now it's finally operational from 1st of October 2025. And obviously this is just done to reduce the cases of frauds. अच्छा, यूपीआई की लिमिट में भी काफ़ी सारे चेंजेस हैं, तो प्लीज़ डू रिमेंबर दैट एज वेल. यूपीआई की लिमिट में बहुत सारे चेंजेस आए हैं अमाउंट की लिमिट में, राइट? उसके लिए भी हमने फाइनेंस करंट अफेयर सेशन में वी हैव ऑलरेडी कवर्ड. सो गाइज प्लीज़ आई रिक्वेस्ट कि आप एक बार उसको ज़रूर देख लीजिएगा, स्पेशली वो क्रेडिट कार्ड वाली पर ट्रांजैक्शन लिमिट और पर डेली लिमिट, एग्रीगेट लिमिट को. ओके, दैट कैन बी इम्पॉर्टेंट. नेक्स्ट, डायरेक्शंस टू द एडी बैंक्स. Measure to provide flexibility and ease compliance burden on exporters, importers and mercanting trading. So what is this all about? What is mercanting transaction, trade transaction, MTT? अब ये mercanting trade transaction क्या होता है? So it's nothing but an Indian trader here is acting as an intermediary. It is buying goods from one foreign country and selling to the other foreign country and making the money, right? Now what has changed here? What RBI has changed here? The forex outlay period. Now what is forex outlay period? Time allowed for keeping the funds tied up with a foreign currency. Time allowed for keeping funds tied up in a foreign currency. So this particular MTT needs to keep some amount of money in the foreign currency. पहले 4 months तक था, अब उसको extend कर दिया है 6 months से. So this will be definitely giving a kind of flexibility to the Indian merchant, right? Because generally in the global trade there are delays, there are shipment issues, there are payment mismatches and whatnot, because there is involvement of two countries, there are involvement of different laws and regulations, there is involvement of forex. So that's why the timeline has been shifted to 6 months instead of 4 months. So earlier it used to be 4 months, now it is 6 months. Important. Okay, this is important. There are so many updates, guys. Then statement and on development and regulatory policy was also released on 1st of October, yesterday only. So I'll be just covering the major things from this particular statement of development and regulatory policies. The rest of the things will be your homework. You can just have a quick reading, right? जो important है मैं definitely अभी discuss कर लूँगा आप लोगों के साथ में. बाकी rest of the things आप सिर्फ एक at a glance reading कर लेना, ठीक है? Expected credit loss model. As of now, what is our existing framework? It is the incurred loss model. Now we need to make a transition towards the expected credit loss approach, right? This particular approach is there in the Ind AS and the IFRS as well, in financial instrument Ind AS and IFRS as well. The similar kind of approach is adopted by Reserve Bank of India, right, for the deposits here. So from the incurred loss approach, we are shifting towards the expected credit loss. We don't want losses. We don't want to first incur the losses and then account for them as a provision. Rather, we will expect, right, what kind of losses a bank can have, in the near future. So what we'll be doing is we'll be making an expectation, right? We'll be fixing a probability of what kind of losses we can incur, and accordingly इसके रिगार्डिंग गाइडलाइंस जल्दी आ जाएंगी, राइट? सून द गाइडलाइंस विल बी आउट, है ना? तो प्रे करो कि गाइडलाइंस बहुत जल्दी ना आ जाए ये वाली सारी, क्योंकि आ गई तो ये वाली सब भी आपको पढ़नी पड़ेंगी अल्टीमेटली. नेक्स्ट इज द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ द रिस्क बेस्ड प्रीमियम फ्रेमवर्क फॉर डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस इन इंडिया. Now what happens is deposits are covered, are insured by the DICGC in India, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of RBI. We all know that, right? Up to 5 lakh. There is a charge on bank. The banks are charged a premium of 12 paisa per 100 rupee. That's the charge of DICGC. That's how DICGC makes money, right? Obviously DICGC is giving insurance to the banks, so it will be taking a particular charge. Now this is a flat rate, right? This is ignoring any kind of risk which a bank is facing. This is ignoring financial soundness, right, of particular bank. So that's why it is proposed to introduce the risk based premium model, right? It is proposed to have a risk based premium model which will account for the financial soundness of the bank, which will account for the financial soundness as well for the bank. I'm just erasing this. It will be difficult for you guys to, read this. So a detailed notification will be issued shortly. So again, this can be another notification that you need to study for your phase 2 examination. Okay, I think phase 2 तक ही ये आ पाएगा आपके, phase 1 में तो शायद नहीं आ पाएगा एकदम से, right? But you need to know that a risk based premium model is on its way. If I talk about the DICGC charges on bank, as of now 12 पैसा चार्ज होता है 100 पे, अब रिस्क बेस्ड प्रीमियम मॉडल होगा, डिफरेंट बैंक से डिफरेंट चार्जेस लिए जाएंगे. गाइडलाइंस ऑन एनहांसिंग द क्रेडिट सप्लाई फॉर लार्ज बोरोवर्स थ्रू मार्केट मैकेनिज्म, ये विड्रॉल हो चुका है. ये वाली गाइडलाइंस विड्रॉल हो चुकी है, ठीक है. तो जब विड्रॉ हो चुकी है तो अब इसके बारे में क्या बात करें. अगस्त 2016 में गाइडलाइंस आई थी, राइट. कॉन्सेंट्रेशन ऑफ रिस्क जो आ रहा था एग्रीगेशन ऑफ क्रेडिट की वजह से, उसको रिजॉल्व करने के लिए, बट नाउ दे आर विड्रॉन, राइट. दिस वाज वन मोर स्टेटमेंट. ओके, ये मर्केंट ट्रेड ट्रांजैक्शन ये हम कर चुके हैं. ये 4 मंथ से कितना हो चुका है आपका, 6 मंथ्स हो चुका है ना. रेस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स आप रीड कर सकते हो, राइट. रेस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स के अंदर ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. सो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम नॉट टेकिंग इट इन अ डिटेल्ड मैनर. ये वाला पर्टिकुलर स्टेटमेंट ऑफ डेवलपमेंट एंड रेगुलेटरी पॉलिसीज, रेस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स क्या करोगे आप, एक जस्ट गिव इट अ क्विक रीडिंग. बिल्कुल स्ट्रेट एंड सिंपल. ये मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स में यही लिखा हुआ है कि आपका सर्कुलर आने वाला है, इस पर आपका ये आने वाला है, आने वाले टाइम में अपडेट आने वाला है एंड ऑल, राइट. अच्छा, एक और चीज, लेंडिंग इन INR बाय ऑथराइज्ड डीलर बैंक टू द पर्सन रेजिडेंट आउटसाइड इंडिया. सो इस केस में इट हैज बीन डिसाइडेड दैट द AD बैंक इन इंडिया, the authorized dealer bank in India and their overseas branches may be permitted to lend INR to person resident in Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka. So AD banks क्या कर सकते हैं, overseas branches में अब lending कर सकते हैं INR में to Bhutan, Nepal and Sri Lanka, right? That was the update here. Then Reserve Bank of India has launched a scheme for facilitating the accelerated payouts regarding the inoperative accounts and unclaimed deposit. There are so many unclaimed deposits and there are so many inoperative accounts. Now RBI has finally released a new scheme related to accelerated payouts. If the bank is contributing here towards the discharge of the unclaimed deposits, then the RBI will be definitely giving a fees. So the scheme is of 1 year period from 1st October to 30th September, from 1st October to 30th September 2026, and accordingly the payout structure will be there. Let's suppose the bank is helping the unclaimed deposit holder. The aging category is 4 years, so the bank will be getting up to 5,000 rupees, right? You don't have to remember the slab, just remember the particulars and the timeline. Okay, that will be even fine. Don't go into too much detail ki bank, because this is an internal payout ultimately, right? And already there is so much of data that I personally feel that it's almost impossible for a particular person to remember the last 6 months data, because we have huge tons of data, right? तो इसको आप यहाँ ignore कर सकते हो एक reading करके. This is nothing but RBI will give benefit to bank if the bank is helping regarding the unclaimed deposit, regarding the settlement of the unclaimed deposit and inoperative accounts. Next, Mr. Shriresh Chandra Murmu has been appointed as the Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India, right? This news was also there on the 30th September on Reserve Bank of India. Then Constitution of the Payment Regulatory Board, PRB, इसके बारे में हमने पढ़ा था. It's a 6-member committee, right? इसके अंदर 6 members रहने वाले. So finally the committee is constituted here, right? Have a look, there are 6 members These will be the part of this particular committee. Revised liquidity management framework. Now guys, I have covered the internal review report on the revised liquidity management framework. So those things that we have discussed in that internal review report are all implemented here, right? So WACR will continue to be the operating target for the monetary policy. Then one thing we have discussed कि 14 days वाला जो है VRR auction और VRRR auction now 7 days वाला हो जाएगा, ठीक है? It will be 7 days only. स्टैंड अलोन प्राइमरी डीलर को एक्सेस मिल जाएगा SDF का, आपका ओवरनाइट रुपी रिवर्स रेपो ऑपरेशंस का और ऑल द रेपो ऑपरेशंस का इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ देयर टर्नओवर, राइट? सो वो सारी रिकमेंडेशन यहाँ पे फिल हो चुकी है. दिस कैन बी वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, राइट? दिस कैन बी वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. तो इसको आप एक बार वापस से पढ़ लेना. आई होप आप सबने वो इंटरनल रिव्यू वाला रिपोर्ट देखा होगा. मैंने उसमें बहुत डिटेल में एक एक चीज़ को कवर किया था रिगार्डिंग ईच एंड एवरीथिंग. एंड दिस इज नथिंग बट उसका फाइनल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन. सो दिस विल बी द रिवाइज्ड लिक्विडिटी मैनेजमेंट फ्रेमवर्क. यहाँ बहुत मेजर चेंजेस नहीं हुए. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकता है. 14 डेज से 7 डे के अंदर हम मूव करने वाले हैं, राइट? सो यू नीड टू रीड दीज पॉइंटर्स. Most are status quo only. Most are status quo only. Then there is data related to the India's international investment position, IIP. Now what is India's international investment position? It's nothing, but I can say it's a country's balance sheet with the rest of the world. How much assets are being owned by Indians abroad and how much foreigners are owing in the, how much foreigners are having acquired the assets in India, right? So whatever we have acquired in abroad is our asset. Whatever foreigners are acquiring in India will be our liability, right? So what things we need to remember here is the first pointer. The net claims of the non-residents are declined to 16.4 to 16.4. So the net claims of non-residents in India are declined. मतलब उनकी हमारी liabilities कम हुई है, right? अगर उनके claims decline हुए मतलब हमारी liabilities कम हुई है definitely. They used to acquire much more than now. So as of now they are having $312.8 billion. They have acquired assets worth rupees $312 billion in June 2025, right? So this is our liability. जो उनका acquisition होगा वो हमारा liability होगा, right? So this is in the declining stage. So that's a good news, right, for us. And why? Because the driving reason here is increase in the Indian resident overseas financial assets. Why? Because हमारे overseas financial assets बढ़ गए. This is net claim, right? ये दोनों का subtraction है. This is asset minus liability basically. So because हमारे claims वहाँ पे बढ़ गए, we have acquired more and more financial assets. Our assets have increased in the value. That's why there is a net decline here, net claim decline here, plus the ratio of the India's international asset to the international liability. So asset by liability ratio, what we are owning in foreign countries plus what they are owning in India, asset divided by liability has improved to 97.2%. ये भी आपको याद रखना है, ठीक है? ये भी आपको याद रखना है, ओके? सो ये पूरा टेबल दे रखा है, आप देख सकते हो यहाँ पे जून 2025 का डेटा है. ये आपका टोटल ऑफ ऑल दी असेट्स आ रहा है, ये आपका टोटल ऑफ ऑल द लाइबिलिटीज आ रहा है, राइट? सो असेट डिवाइडेड बाय लाइबिलिटी रेशियो हमको कितना दे रखा था? इट वाज 79.2, राइट? यस, 79.2. तो इफ यू कैलकुलेट दिस असेट टू लाइबिलिटी रेशियो इट विल बी 79.2 ओनली. इट विल बी 79.2 ओनली, ठीक है? मैंने कैलकुलेट करके देखा था, बिल्कुल परफेक्ट आ रहा है. सो व्हाई आई एम डूइंग दिस? आई एम नॉट चेकिंग देयर कैलकुलेशन, आई एम जस्ट डूइंग एन एडिशनल एक्सरसाइज ताकि मुझे 79.2 का नंबर याद हो जाए. आई जस्ट वांट टू फिक्स दैट नंबर इन माय माइंड, राइट? ऑलरेडी देयर आर सो मेनी नंबर्स, सो इट्स जस्ट अ न्यू अप्रोच. इस तरह से भी आप क्या कर सकते हो, चीज़ों को कर सकते हो. दिस इज नथिंग बट अ प्रैक्टिकल एप्लीकेशन ऑफ व्हाट यू हैव लर्नड. वहाँ लिखा हुआ है तो आप चेक करके देख सकते हो कि अच्छा एक्चुअल में रेशियो आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है. ऐसा करने से क्या होगा, एक तो आपका नॉलेज लेवल थोड़ा सा प्रैक्टिकल की तरफ जाएगा, प्लस यू हैव अ आइडिया कि ओके दिस नंबर इज टैलिंग. सो आपने 2 बार एक ही नंबर को अभी पढ़ लिया, सो हाई चांसेस है कि एग्जाम में भी आपको याद रहेगा. तो नंबर इज 79.2, ओके? Next is India's external debt as at the end of the June 2025. So what is the India's external debt? Abhi ka position, India's external debt on June 2025 is placed at 747.2 billion. Okay, so please do remember this number, and it has increased by 11.2 billion over the last quarter. External debt to GDP ratio also you need to remember. External debt to GDP ratio is now at 18.9%. In June 2025, earlier it used to be 19.1%, now it is 18.9%. What else you can remember? Just give me a second. I'm just checking what else can be important. You need to definitely give a quick reading to each and everything, but I'm just marking few pointers that can be important. US dollar dominated debt remained the largest component of India's external debt. So still the India's largest component of debt is denominated in the US dollar only. Outstanding debt of the general government decreased. Yeah, debt service coverage ratio निकालते हैं ना हम ratio analysis में. How much debt we can cover? That means principal repayment plus as well as interest repayments, right? Stood at 6.6% as of now. Same as the March 2025 month वाला. Same as the March 2025 month वाला, तो उसके अंदर कोई change नहीं है. ये भी आपको याद रखना है. 6.6% debt service coverage ratio, right? So that will be fine again. It will be a good coverage if you are able to remember this thing. Now there are few Economic Times articles that I would like to discuss. This can be very, very important for your examination. Again, I have covered this in May or June month. If you remember, L&T was the first company to raise a particular just give me a second. Okay, so in June 2025 here, in June 2025, so we have learned this in June 2025 plus we have done MCQ question as well related to this. I hope you guys remember this one. L&T issues India's first linked sustainability linked bonds, right? This is from the ESG framework of SEBI. That's why it is important. ये ESG की पूरी guidelines आई थी, SEBI की पूरा circular आया था, right? तो उसके अंदर से ये आपका L&T was the first company to issue a listed sustainability linked bond worth rupees 60 million in June 2025. This is related to that particular facility only. So Larsen and Toubro L&T has secured a sustainability linked trade facility now worth $700 million from the Standard Chartered Bank. Very, very important for your examination, right? And all these things, why they are doing? For the decarbonization journey only. It is sustainability linked bond. That means the loan is tied to the key performance indicator. I don't know whether you guys remember that particular SEBI circular or not related to ESG bonds. Can be very, very important for your examination. So this loan is tied to the key performance indicator of the L&T. That's why it is called as sustainability linked bonds. So वहाँ बहुत सारे bonds थे, sustainability linked bonds, बहुत सारे तरीके के bonds थे, right? That can be important again. So please do remember this news. Then HDFC Bank has been barred from taking any kind of new client in the Dubai branch. Why? Because they have violated some of the norms, right? Related to some of the rules of the Dubai Financial Authority, right? So mis-selling of the high risk credit issues bond was there. One of the complaint was there. So that's why there was a temporary suspension here. But HDFC Bank has stated that it is not at all material to its overall operation, right? HDFC Bank is already quite huge. Then NPCI eyes EMI payments on UPI. This can also be important. So this was there in your Economic Times article. NPCI is further pushing the UPI to credit based innovation. So now let's suppose I want to make a UPI payment of 50,000. I don't want to make it right now. So that UPI payment can be converted into EMI payments. I can slowly pay it, right? So it's nothing but I can say we are turning something which was UPI into credit, right? After the Rupee credit card on the UPI, now NPCI is thinking about the conversion of UPI transaction into equated monthly installments. So this can also be important for your examination, right? Yeah. So that's all from my end for today, guys, and there is an extra dose as well for you, which you need to just have a quick reading. There are some of the news that can be important, right? Definitely all the major things I have covered from the week, but still I'll advise you guys to download this PDF and cover this extra dose as well. Okay guys, thank you so much. Bye bye, take care, and wish you a very happy Dashera. Okay, bye bye, take care.